Hello and welcome, everybody. I can't believe I'm saying these words today. Welcome to my very, very first podcast. So, my name is Tina Willis, and if you're listening today, I have a feeling that you're here for a reason. Maybe you stumbled across this episode by accident, maybe somebody shared it with you, or maybe you're sitting exactly where I once sat, feeling stuck, feeling exhausted, and feeling like life has become just one big to-do list. Getting up, going to work, paying the bills, looking after everybody else, and repeat. And somewhere along the way, you've forgotten about you. You've forgotten about the person that you are inside here. And if that's you, then I want you to know something, guys, right from the start. You're not broken. You're not failing, and it's not too late. It's never too late, because I know exactly how that feels. I know how that felt. For over 30 years, I'd worked in corporate life. I'd climbed the ladder. I'd hit the targets. I'd got the promotions. I'd got that little extra 5% increase every year. Woohoo! And I collected the brownie points, and from the outside, it looked as if I was successful. And I was from the outside. But on the inside, yeah, I was exhausted. I'd hit burnout, I'd hit the wall. I was just surviving. I wasn't even living, but I was still out there being the Tina everybody wanted me to be. And I worked ridiculous hours. I was out all the hours God sends, sometimes 16 or 17 hours per day. And I wondered, why the heck was I doing it? To climb that corporate ladder? To constantly chase the deadlines and the budgets and the targets and the expectations. And then one day, something happened that absolutely changed everything for me. I remember driving home from work. I'd been at a meeting, a head office in the UK, down south, and I was driving home from work, and I had a 2 to 3 hour drive. I was exhausted. I was really tired. It had been a long, long day. It had been Zoom after Zoom after Zoom, completely exhausted, emotionally drained. I was just physically tired. And I remember getting in the car and I felt as if I was on autopilot. And I was driving home along the M6, for those of you who know it. And out of nowhere, I started crying. I started crying uncontrollably. Um, I felt as if something had snapped inside of me. And I don't think it wasn't even a one specific thing, it was everything rolled up into one. It was everything I was feeling just rolled up into one, because I didn't recognize that woman that I was becoming. I wasn't that person that was deep inside of me. I was just on autopilot every single day. And when that something broke inside me, I lost it. I lost myself. I lost my confidence. I lost the identity I thought I had. I lost so much joy and so much peace. And you know what the hardest part of it all was? I didn't know how to change it. Maybe you've ever felt like that. Maybe you felt like that. Maybe you've looked in the mirror as well and thought, when did I become this person? When did I become this version of me? Not because life was terrible, not because that we're ungrateful, but because deep down you know that there has to be so much more than living Groundhog Day, so much more than just working and paying bills and then dying, And I think that moment became the beginning for me of a completely different journey. And it wasn't overnight. It didn't magically fall out of the sky, and it certainly wasn't perfect. In fact, parts of it were hard, but it began with one thing. And that one thing created everything for me. And you know what that one thing was? It was this. It was what was in my mind. It was my mindset. Now, I know for many of you, mindset can sound like those, one of those fluffy words that people throw around online and oh yeah, mindset. Well, what do they know about mindset? I used to think that too. In fact, you know what? I didn't even know what mindset was. I just flew through life on a wing and a prayer. I never even did an own sort of self-analyzation of me, But when I did, what I discovered was this. You create your life by what you think. All right. And all those thoughts, all those stories, all those things running around in your head become your reality. And for so long, those thoughts and stories that I kept running around in my head were ones of fear. They were ones of doubt. They were ones of insecurity. They were ones of me not liking myself very much, And because I didn't like myself very much, everybody else suffered around me, And those stories do become your reality. And it's the beliefs that you hold become those boundaries that you live inside, And for years, I had been living inside those boundaries that I didn't even realize until I hit that burnout and that loss of myself. I didn't even realize I'd created them. I believed that success looked a certain way. I believed that to be successful, you had to be rich. Yeah, you had to be making lots of money. I believed that security looked a certain way. That you had to have that career, that 9 to 5 job that paid the bills, that drained your energy, that we were all conditioned to grow up to believe. I believed I had to keep pushing up that corporate ladder every single day and to keep proving myself that I was worthy of the job. But here's the thing, who proves that you're worthy? Somebody else's paycheck proves that you're worthy, what they pay you. Who shows people what you're worth? Nobody except you, And why do we keep sacrificing our time? Why do we keep doing it? And that, in that day, in that pivotal moment that my life changed, I asked myself the question. And the question was, what if the life I'm living isn't the life I actually want? All right. What if that life I'm living isn't the life I actually want? Hmm. I'm drinking out my favourite mug here, early bird. That's me. Um, but that question changed everything because once you ask that, you can't unask it. Once you've put a question in your head, it always stays there. So I started reading, I started learning, and I started growing. All right. I mean, I read books like Zero Limits, which is absolutely fabulous. Joe Vitale and Dr. Hugh Len, who's sadly passed now. I did my research on him. An amazing man, amazing Hawaiian man, And I read that book, and that became back then my Bible. I also read Jack Canfield, Success Principles. If you can see that properly. The success principles, how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And I read so many things. And I read another one, oops, dropping off the table there. Extreme You. Step up, stand out, and kick ass, and repeat. And I love this book by Sarah Robb O'Hagan. Absolutely fabulous. And they're all bookmarked. But I did that, you know. I kept going and I kept reading and I kept listening to podcasts. My most famous is, my famous favorite is Matthew McConaughey. Be Still My Beating Heart. I think he's amazing. But, there are so many. Jay Shetty, what a man he is. I've actually met him. And I remember asking him a question once at a convention for my online business that I was going on stage. It was my first time on stage doing a mindset delivery presentation in front of my business partners in San Diego. And I remember saying to Jay Shetty, I'm nervous, I'm scared, I feel sick inside, the thought of it. And do you know what he said to me? He said, never stop feeling that way. Because when you feel that way, when you have those butterflies and that fear inside of your stomach, it shows you care. And that stuck with me. So I carried on. I studied personal development. I explored the law of attraction, and I read The Magic and The Secret and The Power by Rhonda Byrne. And I kept looking at what I believed about myself. What was my belief about me? Because over 7 years ago, before I had that burnout and before I started my online business, which has brought me, by the way, guys, to where I am today, I had so many fears. My habits weren't good. My healthy eating habits weren't very good. I enjoyed my glass of red wine, but did I drink too much of it? Absolutely. So I explored all those areas of my life and did some real soul searching and some self-analysis on myself. And slowly but surely, the woman I had lost started coming back. Not a new version of me, but the real version. The one that had been buried for so long underneath all that corporate responsibility, underneath all those expectations of what other people thought I should be, that person who still had dreams. Do you remember when we were children and we dreamt so much? I wanted to be a marine biologist, because I loved Jacques Cousteau. I wanted to be that marine biologist. I had those dreams. I still love watching them all. I still love animals as well. And, all those things. And the one who had dreams of a different life, maybe, and a different career, but the one who had dreams and the dreams came back, the one who wanted that freedom, the one who still believed it was much more possible for me in my life. Did you ever wake up and think every day, I'm meant to be here for something else. I'm meant to be here for more than I'm getting. And I did all the work. And today, my life looks very different. I work on myself every single day. I coach and I mentor people around the world. I speak globally on so many stages. Through my business, I built a successful online business. And recently, I became an author. I put all my words and all my thoughts and all my feelings into this little book here. This is me, but it's all about you, which you can get on Amazon, by the way, guys. And I'll put the link in below this video. And if I'm honest, if I'm really honest, and it still feels very surreal to say it out loud, because I didn't write this book to become an author, all right? I wrote it because I know there are women sitting out there, somewhere in the world, exactly where I once sat. Successful on paper, but empty on the inside. Wanting more for their lives, but not knowing where to start. And that's why this podcast exists, guys. This podcast is for the woman who knows she is meant for more. It's for the woman rebuilding confidence. It's for the woman who wants to rediscover herself. And it's for the woman who's spent years putting everybody else first. So every week we are going to talk about mindset. We are going to talk about identity, confidence. We're going to talk about personal growth and purpose and freedom and how to create that life that actually feels like yours, not somebody else's. Yours. It belongs to you. So if today's episode has resonated with you, I would love to hear from you. Send me a message, leave a comment below this. Tell me where you're listening from, everybody. And if you'd like to go deeper into this journey, my book, This Is Me, but It's All About You, is available on Amazon. And as I say, I'll put the link below. So thank you for spending this time with me. And remember, you're not stuck. You're not finished. And it's never too late to become the woman you were always meant to be. So until next time, take care. This is me, Tina Willis, but it's all about you.